I'm Erin Minckley, founder of Relativity Textiles. I'm a wallpaper designer, artist, published author, and creative coach. Pattern is like the number one way that people express themselves, their personality, their culture, their sensibility and style. And it's not just what we wear or what we put on our walls. If you go back in history, people from different tribes had symbols and patterns that they used on their garments, even in tattoos, that marked where you're from. And it was a way of like identifying with where you belong. So there's like a sense of belonging and a sense of home that comes from certain images and certain repeating images. Especially like patterns do something for us that one single artwork doesn't do, which is when something repeats potentially into infinity, it reminds us that we are small and that we have a place. And there are a couple artists that have done really awesome installations about this, but you know, the idea of repetition over and over and over, it gives a feeling, almost like it wraps you up. And textiles are some of the oldest human, most basic human things that we've had ever since we've been walking on two legs. Whether it's a garment or a house or a pair of boots, these are textiles. So I don't know if you know this, but the way that wallpaper really originated was a long time ago in the days of, you know, there were royalty and there were common people. People with wealth would often have tapestries hanging on their walls. And these tapestries were hand woven in many different colors and sometimes very beautiful and very ornate. And they served two purposes. One was as art or decoration to make your home more beautiful. But the other one was that there's potentially a draft coming in between the bricks or the construction of your walls. And so the tapestry was a way to insulate your room. So people decided with the advent of, you know, modern manufacturing and printing and the Industrial Revolution to make a paper version of a tapestry. And that way common people could afford to have the look of luxury. And so wallpaper was really a way to emulate tapestries and woven textiles, but they were printed. So yeah, in grad school, I went to SAIC for fiber and material studies, which is a fancy way of saying textiles. There were two camps. There's the weavers and the printers. And I never had any interest in doing weaving. It always felt a little too methodical, and there was so much repetition of like the actual physical tasks that you're doing over and over. And I like the instant gratification of seeing an image. You screen print something and there it is, boom. So it was for me more about the immediacy of image making. Like a photographer in the dark room and you put it in the chemical and suddenly it's there, you see it pops out at you. So yeah, in textiles there are always those two camps, wovens and prints. And so it makes sense that I ended up in printed paper. My entire background was in printed fabrics though. I have this belief that people have like a pattern, like a type of pattern. You have like a type or a category that you fall under. For me, I really like half drop patterns things that kind of randomly switch places in a diagonal pattern and stay roughly the same size. I also like things, I'm drawn to things like bird feathers and anything that has like a shingling layered effect, especially if it goes from small to large. So I'm drawn to like imagery like that, and I'm drawn to patterns like that that are out there in the world in architecture or fabric. But other people love the grid. And I think maybe they have a personality that's very either rigid or logical, but for whatever reason they like order. And some people love symmetry, and they love those kind of mirrored repeats like butterflies or anything that has that kind of symmetrical, like a heart shape. Some people like spirals, things that go on and on for infinity, and all of these patterns have like meanings behind them and metaphors and ways that they've been used historically. But this is like part of the work that I've been doing since I was in graduate school at SAIC, and it was always part of my artist statement as an artist when I was making work instead of making wallpaper. You know, 10 years ago when I started out and conceived of this idea of doing something on my own and having a business, I was really good at making things, and I was really good at the hands-on aspects and the ideas part. Especially in grad school, I refined my ability to speak about things because I went to a very conceptual school where the idea matters almost more than the form and the end thing that you produce. So it's basically a degree in philosophy. I'm great at talking about ideas. I'm great at making pretty things, but I had no idea who to sell them to. I didn't even know who might want to buy them. And so it was a great lesson in learning that side of the industry when I transitioned from being an artist to working in print manufacturing. And I spent 1.5 years working in a factory that makes wallpaper. And they've been printing wallpaper in the same way since 1974. And that's here in Chicago. I learned everything there was to know about the industry in the back end of how things are made and where paper comes from and how to create a purchase order and what types of label need to go under the shrink wrapping and how things get shipped. So that was really like the side of the industry that most designers don't see. And I saw that first. I saw production and manufacturing modes. And then I started thinking about designing for the process. And if I could design something that was easy to print, knowing myself how to screen print fabric and having taught that to many students at the School of the Art Institute, I knew how to make a wallpaper that was easily manufactured. So most textile designers don't have that great of an understanding of the manufacturing process. And so they might be designing their files wrong. Their artwork may need lots of manipulation in order to get it ready for production. Like for example, if I wanted to take my artwork and translate it into woven textiles, most likely it's not ready and it would need to undergo many different manipulations by someone who's an expert at weaving technology, software programs, and all of that. So I ended up being the person that would answer the phone when a new artist came to the manufacturer and said, "Hi, I have some art, I'm ready to produce it." And I would have to walk them through how to get it ready for print production. And I spent my time, because I have a background in teaching, explaining to them, this is how you need to get your artwork ready. And if they didn't know Illustrator or they didn't have Photoshop on their computer, normally they would just say, "Can you do this for me? Can you just do that part?" And then, you know, the person I worked for taught me how to use Illustrator so that I could prep everyone else's files to get ready for print production. And I spent hours and hours and hours working on artworks that another artist would send to us. We would get it ready and then send it to the back room where they would print everything. So I became the middleman that was getting everything ready to print. And at a certain point, I'd been staring at this artwork file for like 20 hours. I was like, I'm spending so much of my own energy getting this person's art ready to go be printed. Why am I not doing it for myself? I'm an artist. I know everything there is to know about screen printing. I know all what it takes to run the ins and outs of this business. I'm gonna quit all my day jobs and start Relativity Textiles. And essentially that's what I did. And it took me a while to get things off the ground, but the shop where I was working printed my first 4 designs. And they made me my screens, and I was using like scraps of paper that had been sitting in the back room since the 90s, and they were printing stuff on me for me to sort of see things on different colors. And that was really how I learned how to design my own collection and have it produced. So like now, fast forward, now I've returned to my roots. Having bought this $20,000 machine is a huge risk as a small business, because I don't know if it's going to make its money back. But I know everything there is to know about screen printing. Now I need to learn more about digital printing and how to use this machinery. But I've been doing digital outsourcing to different manufacturers and mills. Now I'm in control of my own manufacturing. I know exactly when it's going to print. I know when it's going to go out the door. I know how to trim the art. I know what the color is going to be. And all of that is in-house. So it's just a much more streamlined process now that I have my own machine. And what became really clear is that, okay, I have all of this, decade of experience in helping other artists get their stuff into production, helping young students print their own work and talk about their own ideas. And now I have a machine. Like, I could potentially help other artists create a wallpaper line and a collection and produce the collection, manufacture, and then market the collection. Because over the past 8 years of running Relativity Textiles, I've learned a lot about how to market and brand yourself and do sales, and really how to get your revenue to a place where you're no longer a starving artist. There's a lot of lines out there that struggle with how to actually be profitable, how to be sustainable, and how to get from the level of, okay, I know how to make really pretty things, to I know how to sell $250,000 worth of wall coverings and fabrics. So, that was really why I wrote the book Artists Who Thrive. During COVID, I had no idea if my business was going to survive. And I thought, okay, what do I know? What am I an expert at? What can I help other people with? What can I teach? What can I give? And I decided to write down my story of how I went from a starving artist to a profitable textile business owner. And all of the mindset shifts that I needed to have in order to get like those breakthroughs, to get past your mental blocks. But also like some of these very basic skills that other business owners have in other industries, like networking, packaging design. These are all things that are not necessarily intuitive to creative people. So that was why I decided to create that book and a series of online courses to help people with sales strategy. Okay, so the last chapter of my book is called Writing Your Own Legacy. And I won't spoil it for you too much, but in essence, what I'm talking about is asking yourself, as an artist, how do I want to be remembered? It's not about how do I want people to perceive me right now. It's not about how does my Instagram post come across. It's about, is my art relevant to people after I sell them a product? Do they walk into that room and go, gosh, I love the feeling in here, because they own your wallpaper and they can't explain why they like that room now that it's been wallpapered. After they read your book and they put it down and then a year goes by and they forget all about it, did something stick with them and resonate at a level that they were able to implement for themselves and expanded their life a little bit in one small, tiny way? That's your legacy. You don't go on to change everyone's life with your art. You don't go on to change the world. You don't go on to save the world from deforestation. Like, we're talking about very small things. And that's what your legacy builds up to be over time. Was that person kind? Does that person have culturally relevant imagery included in their collection? Is this person making meaning for me in some way? Are they creating beauty? Do I like my life a little bit more with this thing in it that someone made for me, like a coffee mug? Yeah, that is your legacy, and that is how you put yourself out there to the world, is knowing that someone else is going to get something from it. It's less about what can I get and more about what can I do? What can I give? How can I serve other people? How can I make someone's life better? How can I improve their situation slightly? And I'm talking about wallpaper, not solving cancer, you know? But it's making the world a little more beautiful for someone. It's helping them express their personality in a way that they wouldn't have if they hadn't seen your wallpaper hanging in the window. And they come in and go, I just love it. I don't know why. It's so fun. And it all goes back to the beginning of like, why are certain people drawn to certain things? Well, it's all relative.